This account details the resolved case of Joyce Chiang. Born on December 7, 1970, in Chicago, Illinois, Joyce was the daughter of Taiwanese immigrants, Mutong and Judy Chiang. She was the youngest of 4 siblings, alongside her brothers John, Robert, and Roger. Growing up in a nurturing environment, her family placed a strong emphasis on the value of education, which ultimately contributed to the successful careers of Joyce and her brothers, each pursuing their individual interests. In her senior year, Joyce took on the role of president of the Student Government Association, culminating in her graduation in 1992. Following a summer internship, she began working as a legislative aide in Congressman Howard Berman's office, while also attending evening classes at Georgetown University Law Center, where she earned her law degree in 1995. Joyce was known for her unwavering dedication to her studies and her clear ambition to secure a successful career. Her hard work paid off, leading her to a position in government. At the time of this case, Joyce was serving as an attorney in the General Counsel's office for the former Immigration and Naturalization Service. The Immigration and Naturalization Service functioned as a part of the U.S. Department of Labor from 1933 until 1940, after which it became part of the U.S. Department of Justice until its dissolution in 2003. Joyce relocated to Washington, D.C., while her family chose to return to Southern California. Given her aspirations, Washington proved to be an ideal environment for her to pursue her goals. She shared her living space with her brother, Roger Chiang, who was employed at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development at that time. This arrangement worked well for both siblings. They resided in an apartment located in DuPont Circle, a well-regarded residential neighborhood in Washington, D.C., known for its safety. Joyce was not only ambitious, but also compassionate, dedicating much of her free time to charitable activities. As her brother Roger often remarked, she was always engaged in good deeds. The atmosphere in DuPont Circle on Friday and Saturday nights is vibrant, with numerous dining and socializing options available. On this particular evening, Roger was at home alone while Joyce enjoyed a movie and dinner with friends. As the night progressed, one of her friends kindly offered her a ride back to their apartment. Joyce expressed to her friend her desire to be dropped off at a nearby Starbucks rather than her apartment, wishing to indulge in a cup of tea before returning home. At that time, the Starbucks was conveniently situated just across the street from her drop-off point at the intersection of Connecticut Avenue Northwest and R Street Northwest, approximately 4 blocks from the residence she shared with Roger. The last confirmed sighting of Joyce alive occurred when her friend observed her walking toward the Starbucks around 8:25 p.m. As the hours slipped by, Roger remained at their apartment, pondering his sister's whereabouts. Initially, he felt no alarm. After all, she was 28 and led an independent life. His concern only began to mount when he awoke on Sunday to find her still absent, with clear signs indicating she had not returned. The door had remained silent throughout the night. Nothing had been disturbed in the apartment, and the food in both the fridge and pantry was untouched. He considered the possibility that she had simply spent the night at a friend's place, yet it struck him as peculiar that she hadn't called to reassure him of her safety. Nevertheless, he reminded himself that she was an adult, not obligated to inform her younger brother of her every move. At least, that was the narrative he crafted to soothe his growing unease. As another day slipped away, he found himself still awaiting any word from her. In his desperation, he reached out to her friends and colleagues, yet none had seen or heard from her either. On Tuesday, January 12th, he took the step of contacting local authorities and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The urgency of notifying the Federal Bureau of Investigation stemmed from her status as a federal employee. When an individual in government service goes missing or is discovered deceased, the case is swiftly escalated to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This protocol is in place for various reasons, primarily due to the potential targeting of such individuals because of their positions. A missing person report was duly filed for Joyce Chiang, with the Federal Bureau of Investigation assuming command of the investigation into her disappearance. Their initial focus was to establish a timeline of her final known whereabouts, which would illuminate her movements and interactions. Through the cooperation of her friends and colleagues, they began to reconstruct her last hours. Joyce had enjoyed a coffee with a friend in the afternoon, followed by an evening at the movies and dinner with several work acquaintances. Ultimately, she was dropped off at Starbucks by a member of this circle. At the time she vanished, she was clad in a thigh-length hooded green coat, a black turtleneck, light-wash denim jeans, and a striking red paisley scarf. Authorities opted to visit the Starbucks where she had been dropped off, engaging with the employees who were on duty that evening to ascertain if any of them recalled seeing Joyce. My findings indicate that Starbucks experienced a decline in customer traffic during the early 2000s. However, in 1999, it enjoyed a consistent stream of visitors, with Joyce among them. This particular Starbucks was her favored destination for coffee or tea. Regrettably, none of the staff present that night could recall her presence. It is essential to consider that they likely served hundreds of patrons that Saturday evening, and unless a customer made a notable impression or had a close rapport with a staff member, they would likely blend into the bustling crowd. Additionally, there was no security footage available. Authorities then turned their attention to Joyce's bedroom, hoping to uncover any potential clues. It appeared that Joyce had no specific plans for that evening after her visit to Starbucks, yet there might be something overlooked that could illuminate her whereabouts. Or perhaps someone had collected her post-visit. The question remained, who could that person be? They noted that she had taken all her usual items for a day out, including her purse, but surprisingly, she had left her pager behind. Upon examining the pager, investigators uncovered a solitary call had been made to Joyce since her mysterious disappearance. Intriguingly, this call originated from a payphone situated outside a hotel near Dulles International Airport, located approximately 26 miles from the heart of Washington, D.C. Regrettably, the identity of the caller remains elusive, shrouded in enigma. In their pursuit of answers, authorities turned their attention to Joyce's romantic history. Although it appeared she was not currently involved with anyone, they did briefly interrogate an ex-boyfriend. Ultimately, he was deemed unremarkable by the investigators, leading to no further inquiries. In a twist of fate, some of Joyce's personal effects surfaced merely a day after her disappearance. However, the individuals who discovered these items initially refrained from coming forward, unaware that they belonged to a local woman who was missing. On January 10, 1999, a couple enjoying a leisurely walk through Anacostia Park, one of Washington, D.C.'s most significant recreational spaces, stumbled upon a billfold just beyond the park's boundaries. Inside, they found Joyce's identification and an expired credit card. The couple promptly turned the billfold over to the park police, where it was subsequently cataloged in the park's Lost and Found. The Anacostia Park region lies approximately 6 miles southeast of DuPont Circle. Just 4 days after the discovery of the billfold, the couple who found it alerted Federal Bureau of Investigation officials upon recognizing Joyce's photograph in the local media. The Federal Bureau of Investigation promptly proceeded to Anacostia Park to retrieve the billfold. The couple explained that they had submitted it to the Lost and Found, although they had not actually discovered it within the park itself. Rather, it was located just outside, adjacent to the Anacostia River. At this juncture, authorities realized the necessity of investigating the river more thoroughly. There was a possibility that additional belongings of Joyce's could be submerged in the water, or, as grim as it may be, that Joyce herself might be there. On January 21st, during their extensive search of the river and its vicinity, they uncovered Joyce's primary ID card, along with her coat, the very one she had worn on the night she vanished. The coat was found torn down the back. These items were located near a traffic circle at the entrance to the Naval Support Facility Anacostia, a naval base situated close to where the Anacostia River converges with the Potomac River. Following this discovery, a systematic search of the park was initiated, leading to the recovery of her apartment keys, her Safeway card, her Blockbuster card, and her gloves. Numerous cards belonging to Joyce were recovered, yet one remained elusive: her debit card, absent from her billfold and nowhere to be found in the park. Although it would eventually be discovered, we shall delve into that shortly. Upon reaching out to her bank, it was revealed that her card had not been utilized since her disappearance, a revelation that filled her loved ones with dread and despair. They clung to hope, yet the prospects appeared grim. Among her family, only her 26-year-old brother Roger resided in Washington, D.C., but it was her brother John with whom she shared the deepest bond. Roger remarked, "John and Joyce, the two J's in the family, possess remarkably similar temperaments." He elaborated, They regard one another as trusted advisors. Both are attorneys, frequently consulting each other on both professional and personal matters, holding each other's judgment in high esteem. However, the distance proved challenging for John, the family member closest to her, as he resided out west, limiting his ability to assist in her case. It was Roger who emerged as the primary advocate for his sister, engaging in interviews, making television appearances, and maintaining communication with the authorities. A reward of $45,000 was announced by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, along with the heartfelt contributions of her friends and family, for any leads that could illuminate the mystery surrounding her disappearance. Roger dedicated nearly every day to raising awareness about his sister's plight. Each week, he organized a candlelight vigil in DuPont Circle, drawing dozens of supporters who came to honor her memory. His devotion was palpable, as he tirelessly sought answers regarding her fate, a sentiment echoed by the authorities, particularly in the early stages of the investigation. They meticulously scoured vast expanses of land and water, interrogating individuals who might have had any ties to Joyce. During their extensive search of the Anacostia River, they discovered a body near the Frederick Douglass Bridge, alarmingly close to where her coat and identification had been found. However, it was quickly established that this body belonged to a man who was later deemed unrelated to Joyce's case. The chilling reality of finding a body while searching for another only deepened the urgency of the search for Joyce Chiang. Helicopters hovered above, while law enforcement, volunteers, and cadaver dogs combed the terrain below. The search ultimately reached a standstill, yielding no further discoveries. Shortly after the search was suspended, an episode of America's Most Wanted, featuring Joyce's case, aired across the nation on January 23, 1999. Those closest to her, along with investigators, held on to hope that this exposure would lead to new insights. While the broadcast did attract additional attention, each lead that emerged failed to bring them any closer to unraveling the mystery of her disappearance. At that juncture, the dominant theory suggested that she may have been abducted, as her loved ones firmly believed she would never have left voluntarily. They expressed to reporters their conviction that she would never abandon those who cherished her, and their fears grew increasingly dire. In response, the Federal Bureau of Investigation sent Joyce's recovered belongings for advanced testing, seeking any DNA evidence that might indicate the presence of another individual, be it hair, bodily fluids, or fingerprints. Remarkably, they did discover hair samples, neither of which belonged to Joyce. One sample was identified as originating from a Caucasian individual, while the other was traced back to an African American individual, leaving no doubt that these strands were not hers, as Joyce was of Asian American descent. This information may have been deliberately withheld from the public eye, yet it remains unclear whether authorities ever conducted a DNA analysis on the hairs to trace the individuals through genetic genealogy, or if they ever made any direct comparisons. It is somewhat astonishing that, at that juncture, authorities had not identified a single suspect, leaving them without anyone to match these samples against, even if they had wished to do so. Investigations into her friends and colleagues were undertaken to explore any potential connections, but all individuals were cleared. There was, however, a notable period during which attention was directed towards her brother, Roger, who was the most vocal advocate for her case. He ultimately underwent a polygraph examination. The results were inconclusive, which he attributed to his heightened anxiety. Authorities had no substantial reason to consider Roger a credible suspect in his sister's disappearance. They simply lacked other leads to pursue. Approximately 3 months after her disappearance, the investigation shifted from that of a missing person to a potential homicide. On the evening of April 1, 1999, at around 6 p.m., a canoeist navigating the Potomac River, roughly 8 miles from where her belongings had been discovered, began calling out for someone to alert the police. In the serene confines of her Fairfax County residence, a woman is abruptly stirred by anguished cries echoing from outside. Compelled by an instinctive curiosity, she steps out to discern the source of the commotion. As she approaches the riverbank, an unsettling realization dawns upon her. Something is gravely amiss. It is then that a canoeist approaches her, delivering the harrowing news of a body discovered along the river's edge. With urgency, she retreats to her home to place a call to 911. Upon the arrival of the authorities, they uncover the tragically decomposed remains of a woman, clad in garments eerily reminiscent of those worn by Joyce on the fateful night of her disappearance, save for the coat. Initially identified as a Jane Doe, the investigators begin to suspect, based on her hair color, stature, and attire, that this could indeed be Joyce Chiang. The possibility lingers that she may have drifted from the Anacostia River, meandering downstream into the Potomac, ultimately finding her final resting place upon the rocky shore. The remains of the Jane Doe are transported to the medical examiner's office in Virginia, where DNA analysis confirms the heartbreaking truth. The body belongs to the missing attorney from Washington, D.C., Joyce Chiang. Roger, in a poignant moment shared with Unsolved Mysteries, recounted the profound sorrow of informing his mother that her beloved daughter had tragically passed away, a task he described as the most difficult of his life. Before Joyce was identified, her missing debit card was discovered in an unexpected location, nestled within one of her socks. This peculiar finding raised numerous questions. Was it a deliberate act by the perpetrator to mislead investigators? Or could it have been placed there by Joyce herself? If she had indeed tucked the card away in her sock, when might she have done so, especially after a night spent socializing with friends? None of her companions recalled her ever placing her card in such a spot. An autopsy was performed, leading to further perplexity, and giving rise to a long-standing theory that her family vehemently rejected. The medical examiners were unable to determine a definitive cause of death. There were no signs of stabbing or gunshot wounds, nor any skull fractures. The advanced decomposition of her lungs hindered any conclusions regarding potential drowning. Could strangulation have been the cause? While that remained a possibility, it could never be substantiated. Ultimately, her cause of death was deemed inconclusive. This uncertainty sparked a theory from authorities suggesting that she had willingly entered the water to end her life, a notion her friends and family staunchly opposed and publicly denounced. The circumstances surrounding her untimely demise were shrouded in an unsettling array of anomalies, and throughout her life, she had never exhibited any indications of sorrow, let alone the profound despair that would lead one to contemplate such a tragic end. This behavior was entirely out of character for her, rendering the authorities' dismissal of her situation almost a disservice to her memory. In fact, Roger felt compelled to lodge a formal grievance against the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. Despite the absence of concrete evidence pointing to foul play, the investigation continued, as there remained no definitive proof to rule it out either. In July 1999, a Starbucks employee came forward with a claim that has yet to be substantiated. He admitted that he hesitated to speak up initially, uncertain if it was indeed her. But he believed he had seen Joyce the night of her disappearance, engaged in conversation with a blonde-haired woman for approximately an hour. This witness collaborated with a sketch artist to create a likeness of the woman purportedly seen with Joyce that evening. Although the Federal Bureau of Investigation possessed the sketch, it was curiously never made public, leaving the rationale behind this decision a mystery. There were those who might have dismissed his narrative as mere fiction, yet a definitive explanation for their lack of inquiry into the enigmatic woman, potentially the last individual to have seen Joyce that fateful night, has never been provided. It appeared that neither Joyce's friends nor her family possessed any knowledge of this mysterious figure, and no one matching that elusive description ever stepped forward to claim her identity. In the ensuing year, authorities oscillated between the notion of suicide and the suspicion of foul play. They eventually discovered that, at the time of her untimely demise, Joyce was embroiled in an investigation by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. Could this professional predicament have driven her to such a tragic end? Friends and family were resolute in their disbelief. Joyce's case languished in obscurity until May 2001, when media scrutiny shifted to the disappearance of a local woman. On May 1, 2001, 24-year-old Chandra Levy, an intern at the Federal Bureau of Prisons in Washington, D.C., vanished without a trace. Both Chandra and Joyce shared government employment, were petite with brunette hair, and intriguingly, Chandra moved just 4 blocks from Joyce's residence in DuPont Circle. They were also regular patrons of the same Starbucks, the very establishment where Joyce had last been seen. Chandra's situation unfolded in a notably different manner. primarily due to the sensational nature of the exposure it garnered. The narrative surrounding her case morphed into a scandal when allegations surfaced regarding an affair with a congressman prior to her mysterious disappearance. The congressman has consistently refuted these claims. Tragically, Chandra's remains were discovered on May 22, 2002, by a man strolling with his dog in search of turtles, near Broad Branch Creek in Rock Creek Park, Washington, D.C. For 7 long years, her case remained stagnant until 2009, when Ingmar Gwandiki was apprehended for her murder. At that time, he was already incarcerated for assaults on 2 other women in the same park. A fellow inmate reported that Gwandiki had confessed to being responsible for Chandra's death. He faced trial and was convicted in February 2011, receiving a sentence of 60 years. However, in June 2015, he was granted a new trial, only to be deported to his homeland of El Salvador in 2016. He was officially deported on May 7, 2017. With the case not retried and the evidence insufficient, Chandra's murder remains officially unsolved, leaving her loved ones in a relentless pursuit of closure. Ultimately, there is no belief that the cases of Chandra and Joyce share any connection. However, they are frequently mentioned in tandem. Additionally, a third case often referenced alongside theirs is that of Christine Mirzayan, a 28-year-old biology intern from Washington, D.C. On August 1, 1998, Christine attended a barbecue hosted by a fellow intern and subsequently vanished while walking back to her dorm at Georgetown University. Tragically, her remains were discovered the following day in a nearby wooded area. The circumstances were harrowing. She had been assaulted and struck in the head with a boulder. 2 witnesses reported seeing her being followed by a man, and another witness recounted hearing her screams emanating from the woods. This individual also observed a man fleeing the scene shortly after the cries ceased. A sketch of the man identified by the witnesses was made public. Remarkably, Christine's case remained unresolved for over 20 years until advancements in genetic testing, facilitated by Parabon Nanolabs, led to the identification of her assailant. On November 19, 2019, 60-year-old Daniel Warwick was apprehended in Conway, South Carolina. He was not only implicated in Christine's murder, but also linked to the assaults of 9 other women between 1991 and 1998, during which time he worked as a landscaper in Maryland. The majority of his victims were located in Maryland, with 2, including Christine, in Washington, D.C. He is infamously recognized as the Potomac River Rapist. On November 19, 2022, just 11 days prior to Christine's murder trial, he was discovered lifeless in his prison cell, with suspicions pointing towards suicide. This individual wreaked havoc on countless lives, yet could not muster the courage to confront the repercussions of his heinous deeds. He denied the families and victims any sense of closure, as they were left without the assurance that justice would be served while he languished in incarceration for the remainder of his days. However, with the resolution of Christine's case, authorities have determined that it bears no connection to Joyce's case, nor does it relate to Chandra's. Chandra's case prompted the media to delve into other local incidents. While there was some attention given to Joyce's case, it paled in comparison to the scrutiny Chandra's received. Christine's case remained largely overlooked until the emergence of Chandra's situation, which is particularly disheartening, as it is likely that Chandra's case would have gone unnoticed had it not involved a married congressman. During Rogers' interview, he emphasizes that all the women were once local interns and shared several similar physical traits. Authorities continued to endorse the notion that Joyce had taken her own life. However, Roger, along with her family and friends, was determined to investigate further, convinced that someone else was responsible for her tragic end. Roger revealed that prior to her death, Joyce confided in him about several unsettling encounters, including a peeping Tom and a man who had followed her on one occasion. He also disclosed a startling piece of evidence. On the brick wall of the alley adjacent to the Starbucks where she was last seen, there was disturbing graffiti that read, "Good day, JC. May I never miss the thrill of being near you." The initials JC unmistakably referred to Joyce Chiang, yet the true significance of this message remains a mystery. Was it a cruel joke, or a sinister clue left by her assailant? The identity of the individual responsible for this graffiti has never been uncovered. The case is riddled with perplexing details. From her torn coat to the ID found in her stocking, the enigmatic woman at Starbucks, the mysterious phone call she received, and now this graffiti. For years, Roger has been a passionate advocate for justice, while authorities wavered between the theories of murder and suicide. John Walsh, renowned for his work on America's Most Wanted, championed the unsettling theory that both Joyce and Chandra fell victim to an elusive serial killer preying on women in the vicinity. Meanwhile, Joyce rests peacefully 2,670 miles away in Forest Lawn Cemetery, Los Angeles, California, beside her father, who departed this world 4 years prior. In a twist of fate, Joyce's brother Roger would later assume the role of executive in charge at America's Most Wanted in 1995. The investigation into this tragic case languished in obscurity until 2011. A full 12 years after Joyce's untimely demise under enigmatic circumstances. On May 12, 2011, the media reported a potential breakthrough in Joyce Chiang's case, although the evidence remained insufficient to bring charges against the two identified suspects. During a press conference, the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department asserted that Joyce did not take her own life. Rather, she was a victim of homicide, and her case is now deemed officially closed. Authorities believe that 3 men abducted Joyce on the fateful night of January 9, 1999, transporting her to a secluded area near the Anacostia River, with the intent to rob her away from prying eyes. Among these men, Steve Allen and Neil Joaquin were identified as a duo who systematically targeted women on the streets, intent on relocating them to more isolated locations for their nefarious purposes. Authorities have revealed that one of the individuals, Steve Allen, is currently incarcerated in Maryland for an unrelated crime, while the other, Neil Joaquin, resides in Guyana, a nation lacking an extradition treaty with the United States. Consequently, the prospect of returning him for trial remains unattainable, even if sufficient evidence existed for a conviction. Reports indicate that a third individual remains unnamed due to insufficient evidence to confirm his involvement, although suspicions linger regarding his potential connection. During a recent press conference, John Walsh articulated the belief that the men may have either forced Joyce into the frigid waters of the Anacostia River, or that she attempted to flee from them, inadvertently falling into the water, where she ultimately succumbed to drowning. This theory is not a mere afterthought. Authorities have dedicated nearly a year to this investigation. They possess enough evidence to suggest they have identified the suspects, yet it falls short of what is required to proceed to trial. Even if Neil Joaquin could be extradited to the United States, the theory implicating these 2 men in Joyce Chiang's tragic demise only emerged after discussions of their involvement circulated within the prison where Steve is held. 3 months after the tragic passing of Joyce, Steve and Neil found themselves in custody for the abduction of a woman near DuPont Circle. They took her to a remote location and robbed her, yet she was ultimately released unharmed, indicating that their intentions did not extend to taking her life. Intriguingly, no connection was drawn between this robbery and Joyce's case, especially considering her body was discovered miles from her last known whereabouts. While Joyce's family felt a sense of relief that her case was finally deemed resolved after a decade, it was a bitter pill to swallow knowing that a conviction would not follow. Authorities believed they had sufficient grounds to apprehend the 2 men, yet lacked the evidence to secure a guilty verdict in court. Much of the information surrounding the conclusion of this case remains shrouded in secrecy, leaving numerous questions unanswered. Nevertheless, her family has expressed gratitude for the closure they have received. Joyce Chiang's legacy continues to thrive in meaningful ways, as her loved ones have dedicated themselves to preserving her memory. The Joyce Chiang Memorial Scholarship was created to provide one deserving student each year with an internship at the Asian American Justice Center in Washington, D.C. Additionally, the Joyce Chiang Memorial Award at Georgetown University Law Center honors a student who exemplifies a commitment to public service, a cause that was close to Joyce's heart. In 2008, Roger published a book detailing his sister's case, titled, My Peace I Offer You, The Disappearance of Joyce Chiang, followed by a sequel in 2009, Travails to Truth My Peace from Prison. A chilling sequence of events began with a cryptic phone call, followed by a baffling disappearance, and culminated in a gruesome double homicide. This is the tragic tale of J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hallett. On August 1, 1999. Ozark police encountered an abandoned vehicle early in the morning. Initially, nothing seemed amiss. However, 6 hours later, as officers awaited a tow truck, the trunk was opened, revealing a shocking discovery. 2 young women's bodies were found inside, each bearing a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. J.B. Beasley was born on July 31, 1982, to parents Cheryl and Lanier Beasley. Raised in Dothan, Alabama, J.B.'s mother described her as spirited and adventurous. From a tender age, J.B. immersed herself in various activities. She began swimming at 9 months, piano lessons at 5, and spent 2 years mastering dance. J.B. and her sisters even modeled for prominent department stores like Gaffer's and McRae's. Her early education was marked by significant contrasts to her tumultuous teenage years. J.B.'s behavioral concerns prompted Cheryl to seek professional help from a child psychologist. Gradually, J.B. began to show improvement, particularly from 6th grade onward, gaining control over her life. However, her spirited nature remained, a trait Cheryl affectionately cherished. In contrast, details about Tracy Hollett's childhood remain scarce. Tracy had recently enrolled at Northview High School in 1999, entering her senior year alongside J.B. Despite their relatively new acquaintance, the 2 girls swiftly formed a strong bond, becoming inseparable best friends. Cheryl's observations suggested J.B. naturally took the lead, with Tracy following her cue. On the evening of July 31, 1999, J.B. and Tracy embarked on a journey in J.B.'s 1993 black Mazda 929, headed to Headland. The occasion was J.B.'s 17th birthday, and they planned to celebrate at their friend Jana's party. Given Headland's proximity to Dothan, merely 10 miles, the drive should have been brief. J.B. and Tracy departed from Tracy's residence around 10 p.m. Just 30 minutes later, the duo was spotted in the Mazda, in Headland. After attempting to locate Jana's home, they realized they were lost and stopped at a local gas station to solicit directions. With Tracy's 11:30 p.m. curfew looming, time was ticking away. An hour passed, yet J.B. and Tracy remained absent from Jana's party. Instead, they found themselves in Ozark, a startling 20 miles from home. Seeking clarity, they stopped at a Big Little convenience store, only to find it closed. Fortune intervened as they encountered Marilyn Merritt, who had pulled in for drinks. Merritt kindly provided instructions on reconnecting with Highway 231 and returning to Dothan. Notably, despite their navigational mishaps, J.B. and Tracy appeared remarkably unfazed. Before departing, Tracy swiftly contacted her mother, Carol Roberts, updating her on their situation. Lost in Ozark, but heading home. The estimated drive time was between 20 to 40 minutes. However, as midnight and 1 a.m. passed, there was no sign of J.B. and Tracy. Carol, exhausted from her nursing work, had fallen asleep after their conversation. She awoke at 5 a.m. to find Tracy still absent. Recognizing her daughter's reliability and punctuality, Carol's instincts screamed that something was amiss. At 8 a.m. on August 1st, Carol contacted the Dothan Police Department. Officers promptly initiated patrols, searching for the Mazda, considering the possibility of an accident. Unbeknownst to these officers, the Ozark police had already located the vehicle. On Herring Avenue, merely 1 mile from Tracy's last payphone call to her mother, J.B.'s Mazda was discovered. Initially, the vehicle appeared unremarkable. No interior mess, broken windows, or obvious damage. However, the car's empty gas tank and muddy sides raised eyebrows. J.B.'s license lay on the dashboard, and both girls' purses remained inside, creating an eerie sense of abandonment. The on-scene detective's intuition whispered that something was off. The car's location seemed inexplicable, and the missing keys contrasted oddly with the abandoned purses. He contacted Ozark's chief of detectives, Lieutenant Rex Tipton, expressing his reservations. "I'm not sure why I'm bothering you, but this feels funny," he said. Unbeknownst to them, this uneasy feeling would soon prove eerily prophetic. Tipton instructed the sergeant to secure the vehicle. After running the plates, he contacted Dothan authorities, learning that J.B. and Tracy were reported missing. Instantly, both Ozark Police and Dothan Police launched a dual-city search for the vanished teenagers. Hours ticked by with no leads. Around midday, a Dothan investigator arrived at JB's Mazda. As he waited for the tow truck, he began surveying the scene. His attention turned to the trunk, discovering it could be opened using an internal lever, bypassing the need for keys. With growing unease, the investigator opened the trunk, unveiling a gruesome sight. The bodies of J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hallett lay inside. The girls were fully clothed, but covered in mud. Tracy bore a single gunshot wound to the temple, while J.B. had a similar wound to the cheek. The chilling reality sank in. Both teenagers had been executed-style victims, brutally loaded into their own vehicle. A crucial piece of evidence emerged: a clear palm print on the trunk's lid, left behind by the killer. Autopsy reports confirmed no drugs or alcohol were present in either girl's system. The investigation now focused on the haunting questions: who was responsible for this heinous crime, and what motivated such savagery? The small town's sense of security was shattered, and the police were determined to unravel the mystery. Investigators kept details about potential sexual assault under wraps, but it was later confirmed that semen was found on JB's underwear and skin. Ruling out robbery as a motive, police noted the girls' untouched purses, containing money and credit cards, and the jewelry still on their bodies. Weeks into the investigation, 28-year-old Johnny Barentine emerged as a prime suspect. His alibi raised suspicions. He left home around 11:30 p.m., coinciding with Tracy's payphone call under the pretext of buying milk for his son. Johnny's prolonged absence and shaken demeanor upon returning home at 1 a.m. sparked concern. He claimed his car was struck by a black truck with Dothan tags on Herring Avenue. As the murder case gained attention and a reward was offered, Johnny began dropping cryptic hints to friends, suggesting he possessed knowledge about the crime. His inconsistent story and suspicious behavior caught the authorities' attention, making Johnny Barentine a person of interest in the investigation. Following his friends' urging, Johnny Barentine voluntarily visited the Ozark Police Department on September 1st, a month after JB and Tracy's murders. During his 4-hour interview, Johnny's narrative underwent significant transformations, raising suspicions. Initially, he described witnessing a speeding black truck on Herring Avenue. However, his story drastically shifted. Johnny claimed he picked up a heavily tattooed hitchhiker and drove him to the Big Little store. The hitchhiker allegedly entered a vehicle with 2 girls and instructed Johnny to follow. According to Johnny, a confrontation erupted when the Mazda stopped on Herring Avenue. Though he didn't claim to have witnessed the murder, he stated he heard 2 gunshots before driving home. Intriguingly, the tattooed man morphed into a neighbor living near Herring Avenue during the interrogation. Investigators had heard enough. Convinced of Johnny's involvement, they arrested him and charged him with 2 counts of capital murder. Johnny Barentine promptly recanted his confession, claiming it was fabricated to collect the reward money. After his DNA failed to match the crime scene evidence, a judge granted his bond request, releasing him from custody. In January 2000, the case went before a grand jury. But without an indictment, Johnny Barentine was cleared of suspicion. The investigation continued, shifting focus to 2 new potential suspects. One man from Michigan had an unclear alibi and was near the crime scene. Another from Mississippi had visited relatives in the area before suddenly departing after August 1st. DNA testing ruled out both men. Meanwhile, police pursued another lead. The Big Little store's surveillance footage showed a small white pickup truck in the parking lot while JB and Tracy were there. Authorities publicly released the information and images, seeking witnesses who might recognize the vehicle or provide information about its occupant. The mystery truck driver remained unidentified, while investigators pursued other leads. Initially, police believed the girls weren't shot in the vehicle, prompting a search for the actual murder site and the source of their muddy condition. 8 months passed before a breakthrough emerged. In March 2000, an Ozark resident came forward, revealing she heard screams and 2 gunshots on the night of the murders. When questioned about the delay, she admitted hesitating to get involved. The woman led investigators to a secluded area beside a vacant house, surrounded by trees. The Federal Bureau of Investigation joined the investigation, meticulously scouring the site. A crucial discovery was made: a 9mm shell casing, matching the bullet found in JB's trunk. This haunting location seemed to be the spot where JB Beasley and Tracy Hallett met their tragic end. The case stagnated despite the significant discovery, lingering dormant for 20 years without new suspects, leads, or evidence. Conspiracy theories emerged, falsely accusing an Ozark police officer and alleging a departmental cover-up. In 2019, the Ozark Police Department revitalized the investigation, leveraging innovative DNA technology. DNA phenotyping, gaining popularity, offered promise in tracking down the perpetrator by identifying relatives. With the 20-year anniversary looming, investigators were determined to solve the murder. The original DNA evidence was submitted to Parabon Labs for re-examination. This renewed effort yielded tangible results, breathing new life into the cold case. DNA testing yielded a breakthrough, leading to the arrest of 45-year-old Coley Lewis McCraney, a Dothan resident. McCraney faced 5 counts of capital murder and 1 count of first-degree rape, stunning those familiar with him. In 1999, McCraney, then 25, was embroiled in a paternity lawsuit and ordered to provide a DNA test, which he never complied with. Despite the gravity of the charges, McCraney had no prior criminal record. After the alleged crimes, McCraney remarried in 2001 and led an unassuming life as a trucker. Maintaining innocence, McCraney pleaded not guilty, despite DNA evidence linking him to the crime scene. The trial, initially scheduled for September 2020, was delayed due to pandemic-related court backlogs. The trial of Coley Lewis McCraney faced another setback in August 2022, as insufficient jurors reported for selection. Only 75 of the required 250 prospective jurors arrived, and the highly publicized nature of the case further reduced the pool. Many potential jurors were dismissed due to preconceived notions or connections to the case. After repeated delays, McCraney's trial was rescheduled for April 17, 2023. The families and loved ones of J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hollett eagerly await justice. The brutal murders robbed the girls of their promising lives, leaving enduring pain and sorrow. As the trial approaches, hopes are high that justice will finally be served, bringing closure and peace to those affected. The legacy of J.B. and Tracy deserves nothing less. Coley Lewis McCraney was eventually sentenced to life with no parole.